The skill that I have chosen for analysis is the box out and rebound. This is when the attacking team is threatening the basket or your team is threatening the opposition's basket. So if the opposition are attacking the basket and have taken a shot, a box out and rebound would then be used to stop someone on the opposition's team from getting the rebounds of that shot. A box out rebound is a technique that involves a player positioning themselves so that they can get the rebounds of a missed shot. This skill is particularly important for centres and power forwards on a basketball court. So this wouldn't occur if the ball went in the net. So if the goal was scored, then you wouldn't do a box out and rebound because you wouldn't get the rebounds. But if it was missed, this is when a box out and rebound would be used. So now I'm going to talk about the preparation, execution, recovery stage of a box out and rebound. So preparation stage. So I've got these pictures here which kind of show it. So it happening by, this is a professional basketballer, Blake Griffin. So preparation. So this is first of all, so you're anticipating the rebound. So first the player needs to make sure that they are watching the opponent to see whether a shot or pass is being taken. So if they look like they're going to take a shot, the player will then get into a ready positioning, into their ready positioning. So the player will have they'll be using their peripheral vision, so they'll be looking at the opponent and at the ball. And so then if it looks like they're going to take a shot, they then get into their ready position, and this is when, so they'll lower their centre of mass by bending their knees, they'll widen their legs so that they have a large base of support, meaning that they're more stable and they're stronger, and they'll kind of get on their toes so they're ready to react. They then widen their chest and make themselves big. They kind of put their arms out to the side and looking like a kind of physical barrier for their opponent. They've got their head up using their peripheral vision, and they're going to adjust their positioning as well. So first of all, they're then going to, that's the kind of first stage. This second stage is that they're then going to place their forearm on the opponent's chest. This is kind of touch. They place their forearm on the opponent's chest. This contact is used so that the player knows kind of where the opponent is and can detect their movement. And the arm is mainly acting as a barrier as well, holding the opposition into place and holding them in their position and stopping them from running forward. So then they're going to plant their foot. So planting their foot has to be on the outside of their opponent's foot, so their stance is wider than the opponent's. So by doing this, by planting the foot outside the opponent, you're acting as a blocker so that the opponent can't get around you. And then the player is going to then pivot. So when pivoting, you've got to make sure that you pivot the way that means that you're always going to be able to see the ball. So you wouldn't pivot facing away from the player, you'd pivot so that you can always see the ball. So the ball should never go out of sight when you do the pivot. So always got your eyes on the ball. And then you're going to maintain that wide stance after the pivot. Position, so you're going to kind of stick your bum out, slightly lower position again, and resisting the opposition from getting round you, kind of using the core strength and delaying, holding them off and keeping the space. So that's kind of recovery, the preparation stage, sorry. The execution stage is then when you then gradually lose contact with the opposition or with the player. So then you're kind of gradually losing contact, meaning you don't kind of know where they are so much, but you're kind of blocking them. So you gradually lose contact with the player, keeping your eyes focused on the ball, and then you move to take off. So you've got all that space from blocking the opponent, you've got the space. You then start to move towards the ball as it's kind of in the air at the moment. And then you move towards the ball and then you time the takeoff. So you've got to time when the ball's coming down and with your takeoff. So here's anticipating it, he's watching the ball, and then here he's going to time his takeoff and he's jumping. So then you run and then jump with 2 feet. So you're going to take off to snatch in the ball. The jump to snatching the ball should be very high, swinging your arms, bending your knees so you get as much height as possible so that you get the ball opposed to the opponent. And you've got to go low and explode upwards. And then when grabbing the ball from the air, you always got to use 2 hands so that it's secure. The fingers should be spread around the ball to ensure that you've got secure hold of it so that it can't be kind of ripped out of your hands. And then finally is the recovery stage. And so when coming down to land, the head should be turning around, looking for where the ball can then be passed on to. So on the land, so when landing on the land, you should then land with a strong, wide stance. Not too wide, but it should be a kind of a strong stance, should be held with the elbows should be wide out to the side. This way is stopping defenders from hitting the ball out the hands, as the elbows are kind of acting as a little barrier. And then you've got to pivot away from the defender, never towards the defender. You pivot away from the defender so it can be safe. And then you're going to, as soon as possible, pass the ball onto a teammate. As at the moment, it's in this kind of risky area. So you want to straight away pass it onto a teammate to get it out of this area. Because at the moment, it's still at risk of an opponent kind of snatching the ball and knocking it out of someone's hands. So you're straight away wanting to move the ball on quickly to then counter-attack down court. So looking at the perfect technical model in comparison to my player here who's a beginner. So preparation stage 1. So first of all, so here I've noticed that she has good peripheral vision, so as she can see both the ball and the player, with her main focus being on the ball so she can anticipate whether the player will then take a shot or whether they'll pass. This will enable her to then quickly react to then perform the skill, the box out and rebound. The professional here is then looking at both at the ball and at the player using his peripheral vision, as is my player here. However, the original stance of my player is, her ready position is very weak. As she doesn't have her knees bent, she's not got a wide enough stance or a wide enough or strong enough base, meaning that she can easily be pushed by her opponent and she won't be a strong physical barrier. She also isn't on her toes, her feet are completely flat, so she won't be ready to respond quickly to what's going to happen. Whereas here, the professional has got his knees bent, he's ready to move, he's leaning forwards, he's on his toes, ready to react, and so that's kind of the better way to be. And then here, the beginner is in the right position, so she's using her forearm to block the opponent from moving towards the ball, and just like the person in the perfect model here is doing the same. So her positioning is good, and her and it's kind of mirroring exactly what the professional is doing, which is really good. So she's got her forearm in the correct place. But here, the beginning is focusing too much on her opposition and not enough on the ball. So she should be looking at the ball a little bit more, as at the moment she's kind of staring directly at the opponent, and so won't be aware of what's going on around her, and won't be aware of where the ball is and what's happening to that. So she needs to have a lot more focus on the ball as well, so she needs to be able to see it slightly better. Because here, in the professional, he's looking more at the ball than he is at the opponent, as the contact is kind of meaning that he doesn't have to look at the opponent so much, because he knows where he is due to the contact and touching him. So the professional is mainly focusing on the ball as he's in contact with the player, so he knows where he is. She then went to kind of plant her outside foot, and she then went to plant her foot and then pivot, but she went to plant her foot, however, it doesn't end up being in quite the right position, as it should always be outside the opponent's stance, so you're wider than. By doing this, you're then blocking the opponent from getting around you, and making it easier by not putting your foot outside the opposition's. It's meaning that it's easier for the opponent to get around her, which is worse. So the execution stage. So she then pivoted and turned the correct way so that she could see the ball the whole time, as it was keeping in contact with her opponent, which is really good. By keeping in contact with the opponent, she was able to know exactly where they were without having to turn her head and lose focus on watching the ball. Having done her pivot, she has a strong stance. Her knees are bent here. She's got her bum out, creating a barrier, meaning that her opposition was struggling to get around her, just like the professional has done too, which is really good. So she's got a good stance here, bent knees, bum out. She's looking at the ball. She's ready to kind of react. She's holding her opposition. And then she went to go and retrieve the ball. She's kind of anticipating watching the ball. She then went to get the ball. However, she didn't quite judge the timing correctly, meaning that she was too far away from the ball, and she didn't do a two-footed jump to retrieve the ball out of the air as she should have done. She didn't have an explosive jump. She didn't bend her knees, and her arms were not kind of pushing her upwards. And due to her timing, it meant that she didn't jump upwards. Whereas the professional here, he's got a lot of height on his jump. He's exploding upwards. He's got his both arms in the air, catching it with two hands. Whereas the beginner, she didn't jump, the ball could have easily been lost from her, as if someone else had jumped for the ball, they would have got it before she would have done, so that's definitely a weakness. And also, because she didn't jump, she therefore didn't have time in the air to look for where she could then pass the ball onto, so that it would be in a safer area. Whereas the professional timed his jump perfectly, using his arms and legs to do a two-footed jump into the air to power him up towards the ball so that he could win the ball and so that his opponent wouldn't get it. And then once caught the ball, so the recovery stage, so once she'd caught the ball, because she hadn't done a two-footed jump in the air, she therefore didn't have any air time on the landing of the jump to look for someone to pass to, meaning that after she had caught the ball, she then had to look and waste time, which is meaning that this is a weakness, as by this time the opposition could be crowding around her, attempting to steal the ball from her hands, meaning that she needs to quickly get the ball away from this dangerous area and to a member of her team. Whereas the professional was in the air, meaning that he was able to look around and assess the situation while he was in the air. And while you're in the air, you're grabbing the ball, it's safer than when he lands, because as soon as he lands, he'll then get his opposition trying to snatch the ball from him. So when he was in the air, he was able to look around him and assess the situation. And also, while he's in the air, the ball is safer because as soon as he lands, he's vulnerable to the ball being taken off him. So he wants to pass the ball as soon as possible. So in the air, he's made his decision about where he wants the ball to pass to, and so he can do it immediately. As soon as he lands, he can pass it. Whereas when the beginner landed, she didn't bring the ball into her chest as well. So here, she didn't bring the ball, isn't close to her chest, meaning that it's not protected, and so can easily be taken off her by the opposition. Also, her elbows aren't sticking out, which is another limitation. This therefore means that it's likely a member of the opposition will knock the ball from her hands, as they'll be able to access the ball much more easily. And her grip on the ball is also weak, as she should have her fingers completely surrounding the ball, but instead she's got a very loose grip on the ball, whereas the professional has the ball up higher, his elbows are out, his hands are completely spread around the ball, and he's ready to pass on the ball. It's safer, whereas here it can be easily knocked from her hands. And finally, I'm going to be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of technical analysis. So technical analysis has many advantages and disadvantages. One advantage of it is that it enables coaching points and phases within a skill to be identified, which can therefore help a player improve. If a skill is broken down into simple component parts, it makes it easier to identify the strengths and weaknesses in a person's performance, which can then be translated into the player's performance to improve the individual's technique of a skill. It can highlight errors within a person's technique, which may be meaning that the completion of the skill isn't as effective as it could be. Another benefit of technical analysis is the fact that a beginner's performance can be compared to that of an elite athlete. Looking at the best technique via the best players in the world is a very valuable way to aid an individual's performance. This is because elite athletes will be performing the skill in the best and most effective way and will therefore be demonstrating the perfect technical model for a skill. Looking at the way that they perform the skill can help an individual imitate it so that their performance can improve. If an individual are beginners, a coach should show them a professional performing the skill so that the players can get an idea of what the skill is meant to look like and so can copy and imitate it. The use of advanced software such as overlay and slow motion enable a skill to be looked at in greater depth. This can be done on an elite athlete's performance, or a coach may do it on a player in their team. By looking at skill in fine, precise movements, these all can be looked at, which may show the reasons why the skill isn't being performed as well as it could be. Also, due to the skill being videoed, it can be used to show the progress a player has made with their techniques and show how much their performance has improved. This can massively boost a player's confidence and can be interesting to look at how far a player has come in comparison with the videos, so before and after they've had their technical analysis. Furthermore, it can also help identify reasons why an injury may occur, which can then be used to find out ways to prevent them. If common errors are spotted, which tend to lead to an injury, a coach can identify them and, before even teaching the skill to a team, bring them up and tell players how to avoid the common mistakes so that injuries are less likely and so that incorrect technique isn't picked up, which may be hard for a player to later change, as incorrect technique can often lead to injuries. So it can help by preventing injuries and common mistakes. So meaning that people don't learn the common mistakes and making it harder for them to change. They straight away can change them. And then disadvantages. Some disadvantages of technical models or technical analysis include that the software used in the analysis is often very expensive, with some software such as Dartfish costing around £1,000. This therefore means that it isn't accessible for everyone to use, as money will be a barrier for some. Also, some of the software can be very advanced and difficult to use, which may limit the amount of analysis that someone is able to do. Often very specialists are needed to interpret and use the very advanced software, as coaches may not fully understand how to use it and the features it has to offer. Professionals may be required, or those who have great knowledge about the technique. Another disadvantage is that it can be very difficult for use with teams, as it's often comparing an individual with an elite player, using overlay or something like that. And so this can make it very time consuming if a coach wants to compare each player with a team's technique, so each player with an athlete's technique. Or if a player wants to look at many different techniques within a sport or many different individuals, this is also very time consuming, because looking at many different techniques, breaking them down is such great extremes, and then comparing them with players can take a really long time. It can be much easier to focus on for individual sports than team sports, as just one player is being focused on, so more depth and analysis can be conducted onto that individual and that technique. Analysis of each stage in a person's technique can be very time consuming, especially when there are many different features via the software which can be used. Another disadvantage is that it may be simple picking out and identifying the mistake or a player's incorrect technique, but actually changing their technique may be more of a challenge. Once someone has picked up a skill and may be doing it incorrectly for a long time, for them changing their technique will feel very unnatural and may be harder than imagined. If this happens, a player's performance may not improve as quickly as the coach previously envisioned. Another limitation is to do with the filming effect it could have on players' performance. Often when players are conscious that they are being filmed, their technique may change due to evaluation apprehensive and feeling very anxious about the fact that they're being videoed. So what is filmed may not actually be a true representation of what the player's technique actually is like. If this occurs, then a coach spends a long time doing an analysis of the performance or of the technique that has been filmed. They may have wasted their time, as the effect of filming may have altered the player's performance and decreased their technique and made it worse. And if a coach has spent a long time then analysing this could be simply a waste of time.